perpetuated by the fact that, as you pointed out, you are an island, which helps, of course. Jacek Rostowski, Poland is not an island. Europe is not an island, for that matter. And the numbers that we are getting from Europe are quite troubling indeed, both, of course, in terms of the human toll, but also the economic ramifications. If I understand correctly, Europe and Poland is just going back into yet another lockdown. Economically, quite a difficult situation, isn't it?
Yes, indeed. I mean, Poland did rather well in the very first wave by having a very sharp and very extensive lockdown. And it had a very low level of infection. But then over the summer, things were loosened up very considerably, mostly for political reasons. The ruling party wanted to be able to hold elections over the summer. That was convenient for them. And that, taken together with the development of the British variant, Kent variant, has resulted in an absolute explosion of infection and indeed death throughout Central and Eastern Europe, but as you said, particularly in Poland, already in the autumn and with renewed strength from the beginning of this year, and particularly now. Things are, from the point of view of fatalities, even worse, for example, in Hungary and the Czech Republic, but it's a general pattern that we can see. So far, economic losses have not been that big because Central and Eastern Europe tends to focus on manufacturing as opposed to tourism and services. And as the Australians have noted, the recommodification, the increased importance of goods relative to services has actually meant that Australia, as a producer of raw materials into the goods, has not done badly, and the producers of the goods, Central and Eastern Europe, as part of the German supply chain, has also done relatively well so far. But dealing so badly with the later waves of the pandemic has meant that the situation is extremely worrying for the near and medium-term future, of which I suppose we'll talk about a bit later, because there's a lot to be said about the world picture.
The next question, Jacek Rostowski. When asked in 1992 as a candidate, US President Bill Clinton, when he was asked about the most important issue of the election, he says famously, it's the economy, stupid. And we do see that people are rising up. We do see people unhappy. We do see them frustrated. We do see them suffering unemployment quite high throughout the world, but in Europe as well, of course. Do you foresee, the longer this economic crisis lasts, do you foresee also political changes? Do you see that governments will, they are already under increased pressure, but do you see some form of public pressure, increased public pressure on governments worldwide?
Well, we've already seen that most governments don't do terribly well if they've been through this first part of the pandemic and come up to elections. The defeat of Donald Trump is one example, and we can see the poll ratings for many other governments in power across democracies don't necessarily hold, although there are some exceptions, the UK being one. I think one of the ways that it might be useful to think about this is that we still have a huge level of uncertainty around this epidemic, both, well, first of all, at the medical level, and therefore we don't know what the correct policy is likely to be. I mean, we've got vaccines coming on stream extremely fast, much faster than one might have expected, but at the same time we have variants developing, which might mean that we'll be going through a succession of waves as the evolution of the virus and the development of the vaccines come into conflict. And the reaction then on the economic side might be repeated and unexpected and unexpected lockdowns and restrictions. And if we put that together with the huge increase in government debt and in the quantity of money that has been created by central banks, which has been mentioned by previous speakers, then essentially what has happened is that the two key governments that are involved and the central banks that are involved in determining market conditions in the world, particularly as far as financial markets are concerned, in other words, the United States and Europe, have had to take a bet on what is likely to happen. And the bet they've taken, more in the United States than in Europe, but nevertheless on both these continents, is that things will be bad and that the expansion has to be extremely large. Now, it may in fact turn out that that's wrong, that the vaccines will be extremely effective fairly quickly, in a matter of 6 months or so. And then it's quite possible that we'll be faced with a surge in inflation, certainly in these two areas and maybe worldwide. And then there'll have to be a period of quite sharp monetary policy contraction. And we might go into quite a longish stagflation. The other possibility, but in the end, the bottom line of all this is, both as far as the debt problem is concerned and as far as the monetary policy problems are concerned, or monetary policy conditions are concerned, is will it be possible to maintain interest rates as low as they have been for the last, well, it's now quite a long time, coming on for 8 years, and they've been trending down. If it is, the debt problems and the fiscal sustainability problems will not be very great, even for relatively weak countries. If, on the other hand, the interest rates rise sharply, and they might do, as in the scenario that I described, then that's going to be a problem even for financially powerful and fiscally previously conservative countries. So I think we're really facing a sort of bifurcation, two possible scenarios in the world. And frankly, it's very much up to what happens in that race between the vaccine and the virus on the one hand, and what happens to other things which underlie this long period of low interest rates, which is demographic developments and technological change. And we don't know at this stage what it's going to be. But one thing we do know is it's going to be surprising and politically dangerous, and also dangerous from an economic policy.
Absolutely. Politically dangerous, nonetheless, no matter in which geographic region you find yourself in. I think that's become abundantly clear.